Fabrice Mbah was a graduate of Montgomery College in 2015, went on and earned his degree from the Smith School of Business at University of Maryland, and has his CPA, so he is a certified public accountant, is currently living in Florida as a CPA, and has graciously offered to join us to give us a few of his tips for to help us all be more successful in the work that we do. I also just want to mention, you'll see a poster behind Mr. Mbah. He is, in addition to being a great student and a great accountant, he's also a great fan and player of soccer. When he was at Montgomery College, he was the athlete of the year that year and an All-American soccer player, and also the captain of the soccer team. So there you go. So, very well-rounded guy, and was also a student in the Southern Management Leadership Program at Montgomery College, and also at the University of Maryland, where he was just a wonderful contributor to the program. So I was really happy to be able to bring him in today. He's going to be talking today about what could be called life hacks. So what does it take to be a successful student and to be successful in your career path?
Thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction. It's nice to see familiar faces. It's Jane, obviously, as well. So let me get started real quick. I'll share my screen and let me know if you guys can see that. First of all, when Professor Rebecca, or I call her Professor Rosario, Rebecca, either one, when she reached out to me about coming to talk to the students, I thought of different things that I could do. And I think for me, I decided to talk about something that they could relate with. And because I know a lot has happened in my life within the last few years, as far as career-wise and everything. So I thought maybe by me sharing some of these experiences and some of the things that helped me to get to where I am now, I might be able to inspire one or more other students to be able to, maybe you could pick one thing from this presentation, maybe you could pick the whole thing, however, whatever you think is important in your life, you could pick. Hopefully you can take something from this and implement in your life, and hopefully it guides you as we're all moving towards this successful life. So that's why I decided to talk about the key to success, or some of the things pretty much that has helped me throughout my whole time from school to where I am now in my career. But to start off, I wanted to give a bit of my background. So I was born in Cameroon, West Africa. That was where I was raised. For those of you who don't know, that's a bit closer to Nigeria. We share the boundary with Nigeria. And I moved to the US in 2012. And I went straight, I didn't really finish high school in Cameroon, but I just went straight to college here because I had to take the test, and they said you can just start off right away. And so I started up at Montgomery College, I think I spent 2 years there. While at Montgomery College, I was involved in the Hillman Entrepreneurs Program, as well as Professor Rebecca said, I was also playing for the soccer team and everything. And I worked on campus, and that's how I met Miss Jane, because I worked in the campus reading and library as well. And then from Montgomery College, I moved to University of Maryland, where I pursued my bachelor's in accounting. And then from there, during my senior year, I did my internship with Deloitte, which is one of the big four accounting firms. Deloitte at that time was number one, as you can see on the slide there. Those are the big four. So I did my internship with Deloitte during my senior year, got my full-time job, and when I graduated in 2017, that's where I started full-time. From Deloitte, I went to eCohen afterwards, spent 2 years there, and that's where I also got my CPA exam and my CPA license. And then that brings me to where I am right now, which is with BDO, which is we're ranked number 5 right now in public accounting. So that's a bit of my background. But how do I get there? How do I go from this small country in Cameroon? We're not blessed with the most wealth. And how did I go from that small place to obviously working for the best accounting firm in the world and all of this? It took a lot of things, and some of this is what I want to share today. So I think the first thing I wanted to say is really, as students and as we pursue our path to success, I think the biggest thing that helped me was dreaming big, Um, the first step really is I had this big dream. When I first started at Montgomery College, just like many students, I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to play soccer. That's the only thing I knew. The rest was just where I would see, but I knew I wanted to play soccer. But as far as education wise, I thought, okay, maybe I like math, but I don't like the sciences. So I wanted to find something I could do that involves numbers. And so I was looking around. I asked my dad, can I be a banker here? Because in Cameroon, the bankers are famous, they wear the suits and they're the ones who dress up well and nice. So like, I want to do that. Can I be a banker? And he's like, no, that doesn't pay here very well. So I looked at it again. I was like, okay, what else can I do that involves numbers and that? And so, okay, what about accounting? He's like, well, you could try that. So I pursued accounting, but I say that to say that at this point in our career, students especially, you probably don't know exactly what you want to do, and you feel frustrated about life. You feel like worried, like, am I behind? And you feel so worried about because you don't know what you want to do. But it's okay, because even the most successful people didn't know not all of them knew exactly from birth, I want to do this. Sometimes it takes, some people know it ahead of time. Sometimes it takes life experiences to bring you to where you are. And so, but yeah, once I decided that I wanted to do accounting, one thing with me, regardless whatever I've done, whether it's soccer, school, I've always, it's always been one thing that I've always had is my mindset has always been strong, and I've always wanted to be the best at whatever I do. And I think that's crucial for any student that is trying to decide your future. So regardless what you want to do in the future, you have to have that winning mentality, because if you aim for the best and you don't achieve the best, chances are you would probably get to a level that is not far off. But if you aim for mediocre or average and you don't get it, you might fall in the lower half. And so that's always been my mindset. So when I picked accounting, the first thing I asked myself is, okay, that was my plan. I was like, okay, I want to do accounting. But now the big thing is ask myself, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want to go big. So what is the biggest accounting firm? And so I did a bit of research, and I found out the big fours are known for what is the biggest accounting firms out there. And so I reached out to Go Blanco, she was the head of our Human Entrepreneurs Program. I was like, do we have any student in the big four in this accounting, big companies? And we had one at that time, Dedrick, who had just broken in that barrier, and he was one of the first. So I spoke to him, and I tried to get what it entailed to get to the top. And I think that's crucial, because now you can dream big, but it doesn't matter as long if you don't have a plan. So I dreamt big. I wanted to reach at the top level, but now I had to take the next step, which is figure out what it would take. And once I figured it out, then I had to make my plan. And that's the second part of this slide. If you see, it says, what's your detail? What's the detail of your plan? Like, what are the details? Like, what would it take for you to get to that level? And so I dreamt big. I had my plan. But now let me get into discussing some of the things that it entailed, like the details, like what were some of these details? And so how do you really achieve your goals? Sorry, let me see. How do you really achieve your goals? Challenge yourself. So the first thing that I had to do was really challenge myself. First of all, just dreaming of trying to go to the best is really a challenge for me as well. And what I meant by challenging yourself is I knew that to get to this goal, after having spoken to the people that made it into the big four, I knew I had to get the best grades. The first step was getting to University of Maryland, and not just getting there, but getting to the Smith School. But what does that entail? That means you have to have a 3.5. How do you get to 3.5? Your studying habits. That's where it starts. How am I studying? Was I just getting away with just getting the bare minimum and passing? Or because if you're aiming to get to the best, you obviously can't just get away with the minimum. So I had to improve my studying habits. Now, as most students do, you probably do your homework, you do the basics. You're like, okay, I have a 3.0, that's good enough. And you move on, you're fine with that. But to reach the level that I wanted for myself, I knew that wouldn't be enough, because I had to do more than the average student to get to the best. And so I had to do things like, for studying wise, I had to, if let's say the semester starts in 2 months. I had to get my books at least a month ahead. I had to go through, read some of the stuff, get prepared. Because what I realized is preparing is always the key to being successful. You know, I never wanted any surprises. So by studying 1 month ahead of time, what that did is that meant before school started, there was no surprises. And so I was joking with Professor Rebecca earlier, Professor Rosario earlier, and I was telling her, like, you see how some students, you sit in class and, you know, the teacher's teaching and they ask a question and there's this one guy that all of a sudden always has the answer. And you're like, but how does he do it? Like, this guy's just so brilliant and smart. And then it turns out when you really follow these students, these are the guys that are just better prepared. These are the guys that before classes, they read every single chapter. And so when they're sitting there in class, they're pretty much reviewing what they've already read. And so that's the second time they're hearing this stuff and it sticks even better. And so those are the things that I had to do. I had to be preparing months before even class starts. Now, when during the semester, before I go to every class, I have to read every book, read every chapter, you know. And so it's a lot of challenge. It takes a lot to be able to dedicate that time. But as long as you have that goal on where you want to be, then you have to know that it would take a little bit of sacrifice. So I had to improve my studying habits. I had to take on more load. Like, okay, yeah, you're fine with doing 12 credits, but if you want to graduate at a certain time, does that mean you might have to take one extra class? Okay, now 15 credits. Now, people are scared. Everyone, because as students would sometimes, everyone tends to be scared of challenges. Like someone tells you, oh, 15 credits is a lot, 18 credits is a lot, 21 is a lot. And so we're living our lives with all these restrictions because of what everyone is telling us is the reality. Whereas I remember the first time I took 15 credits, I was like, this is not that bad. And so it's being willing to accept this challenge and open up a little bit. And I'm not saying you going from 12 credits to 21 credits, slowly opening up what the workload you have and what you're willing to take on. And I think over time, before you realize it, you're far off. And so another challenge that I accepted was public speaking, for instance, as well. Obviously now I took on this challenge to come talk to the students, and people look and say, oh, you can talk to people, you're not even scared. Were you born with this? And it's like, no, when I moved from Cameroon, I could barely speak good English as well. But it took time. I remember I had to challenge myself because part of the things that I realized when part of the skills that were needed in this profession was, can you talk to people? So I remember I'll be sitting in club events and I'll tell myself, okay, I'm just going to lift up my hand and ask a question because everyone is panicking your heart. You know, it's a club event, someone is speaking, the speaker's there, guest speaker's there, and you're scared to lift your hand and ask questions because you know, that fear of public speaking. So I used to tell myself, well, you know what, just raise your hand and ask a question. Even if you don't, it's not really about the question. It's about breaking the ice and getting yourself comfortable with things like that. And so I remember the very first time in Montgomery College when I raised up my hand, I think it was a business event, and the presenter was presenting, and I told myself I'm going to try it. And the first time my heart was beating and everything, I lifted my hand up, stood up, asked the question, and once I sat down, that was then where I started realizing that, okay, well, I can do this, you know. And also under this challenge yourself, I want to talk about stuff like the Toastmasters, which was something that when I was in Montgomery College, I don't know how many people know about it, but Professor Rezavi introduced us to that as well. Where is this social event where you guys come together and you present speeches about what is happening in each other's lives and what some of the difficulties you've had and all of that. But what that did for me is that it got me used to going up and talking about my experiences and sharing about yourself. And through that, you learn little skills like public speaking, because I remember when Rezavi offered us the opportunity to do that, we could have some students said no, they won't do it, right? Because it's that feeling of being in your comfort zone. I don't want to stand up there and give a speech. But after a while, the people that did that, you realize a big jump in their confidence to be able to speak in public, and little skills like that long-term come into play, you know. So that was really the first thing. I had to get out of my comfort zone. And then I had to, I learned that building your network is very crucial. Building your network is very crucial because like at the end of the day, there's so many opportunities that come from who we know and the people that we've made connections with over our careers. It could be just as simple as Professor Razavi, could be as simple as all other professors, our mentors in school. I think Montgomery College has a lot of events that we could take advantage of to build our network. They have a lot of teachers in different facilities, in different faculties that could help us and even as small as our classmates could be part of that network. I remember there's people that I started with in my Human Entrepreneurs Program that I'm still talking with today for advice. I'm seeking for advice from these people. That's part of my network. People that maybe tomorrow they have the person sitting next to you tomorrow might have their own business. And now all of a sudden I'm doing taxes for their own business. And that's my client. So I realized that whoever I met throughout my progression, somehow it was important that I created that network with them because somehow in the future, they played a role in my life in taking me to the next level. So as students, it's very important that you create this network, whether it's with your teachers, because you never know, you might see your teacher as just someone sitting down and explaining the course material. But there's more. Your teacher, you won't be surprised if your teacher tomorrow at some point you've graduated and gone and you call them and they'll give you advice in other aspects of your life. So little things like that. So it's important that I know some of us just want to go to class, take the lesson and go home. That's it. The relationships, you're a teacher, I'm a student, and we go home, we path ways after the class. But I think a lot of teachers especially at Montgomery College, a lot of teachers that I notice, they do the stuff they do because they enjoy it. They do it because they're passionate about it, and they do it because they have life experiences as well that they want to share with you. And so by building your network with them and that connection, long term, these teachers could be the ones impacting your life in different aspects. So it's important that all this, you're building your network with not just your teachers, not just the students, but even events and everywhere you go, you're taking cards, and building because this could potentially be your clients or important people in your life. So that is something that I noticed helped me to get to where I am. Utilizing resources as well. I used to always go back to MC. Even when I went to Maryland, I would always go back to MC to get to use the lounge to study. I remember when I was studying for my CPA exams, I'll go back and I'll meet Professor Zavi again. I'll meet her there. We had the lounge. It was free of charge. So I'm not sure. So it was always available for us to study. Other libraries would be closed, but our professor will be like, hey, come use our lounge, and I'll go to the lounge. That's a free resource that helped me. I know MC also has I'm not sure, because obviously I left in 2015, but I know, and obviously with COVID, things have changed. But while I was there, I know for like accounting, for instance, they had accounting teachers and tutors that free of charge, but already paid a tuition for this, where, you do your homework, you go to them, they check to see if it's correct, and they help you out with questions and everything. That was free of charge as well. So, and I know other departments have this. I know we have the writing center as well. So there's a lot of resources on campus that to get to that level and to get to where you want to be, you can take advantage of it, especially because you're already paying for this stuff in your tuition as well. So for me, there's a lot of resources that you can take advantage of in school. I took advantage of a lot of the resources throughout my time in college, and I think that helped me as well. Save money, not even save money because you're already paying for it, to be honest, in your tuition. So, and I think one other thing that I wanted to mention is like the counselors as well. The counselors are there to help out. You have these guys that have been in the career, they've seen it before you, and the reason why they've seen it is so they can help you. And so you can take advantage, go to counselors. I had specific counselors that I went to that I knew that had been through the path that I wanted to go. So I took advantage of that, constantly going to these counselors. Like for me, it was business. I don't know whatever profession, whatever career you're in. For me, it was business. I'd identify specific counselors that I would always go to. And even till today, when I'm in Maryland, I still go to these people and I talk to them about just life in general. And they help me out in different ways. So again, those are the resources that they have in school that I took advantage of. And this is the first time I'm presenting on Zoom for a while. So I might jump through the slides, but making long-term decisions rather than a short-term. And I had a conversation with Reserve about this. I said, I think for me, as you know, as students, this is a tricky place, because there's a lot of times where, because obviously as students, we're still trying to discover what we want to do. We're still figuring ourselves out, and we're caught up in situations where we have to make decisions. You know, for example, like you might feel like you want to be maybe an artist. You're good at singing or something, and we don't have the funds to pursue that at the moment. And we're caught up with, should I leave school and go do this? And, you know, sometimes you have to draw yourself back out of this situation and say, but, you know, would it make more sense to go to school, get my degree, get more funds where I'm able to provide for this, and then chase this dream? And so, like, for me, like I was sharing with Professor Rezavi earlier, for me, my situation was more with soccer. So I always wanted to play. I wanted to play when I moved to the US, my dream was to one day be professional. So school was for me a byproduct in the beginning. And so when I moved over here, and I was transferring from Montgomery College I had the choice of either going to Maryland or getting a scholarship to go play for American University. But I desperately wanted to go play because I wanted to always play. But what I had to ask myself is, well, if I went and played, I would have attained my short-term goal of playing and having fun. But would that have ultimately helped me career-wise? Would I have gone pro from there? You know, and the reality is no, because American universities, the soccer team is not as strong, and club teams don't really, like the MLS, and they don't recruit players from American University. It's a D1 school, but players don't get recruited from there. So chances are I would have gone there, played, and be happy in the short term. But long term, career-wise, I probably would have ended up going to pro, and I probably wouldn't have had the opportunities I had on the other side, which was University of Maryland, where I decided end up going to the Smith School, which is highly recognized, and I had the grades for it. And the human program obviously was paying part of my tuition. And so that ended up working out even better, because then I could take advantage of the resources they had there. They have, for the Smith School, they have a lot of resources. They have a lot of recruiters from the biggest firms, like Deloitte, obviously, where I worked at, and all these people go there and recruit. And so I say that to say that when we're caught up as students, I know we have all these decisions we have to make, especially career-wise. It's important that you're thinking of long-term. This decision might help me now, but in the long term, would this get me to where I want to be? Would this help me? Would this help pay the bills, which is the more important question? Would this be sustainable? You know, will I have the funds to invest in this? Do I have the family back? And now I'm not blessed. I wasn't blessed with the family that had the funds to just say, go play, we'll take up everything. You just worry about playing and classes. I didn't have that. And I had to realize that, yes, maybe my friend might have the opportunity, but does that work for me long term? And so that's why I think this slide is very important to me. So it's important that students are thinking about the decisions that would this help me long term or short term. And also, this last thing here, I had to also learn throughout my time from school to work. I had to learn that it's very, very important to find time to do the things that you like. Even though I was caught up in taking a lot of credits. I think it was a point in University of Maryland when I was taking 21 credits, doing honors program, doing all these different things. But I had to always find time to play soccer, to coach kids, which is ultimately what I want. Even when I was working when I was at the busiest time of my career, I had to find time to coach, work with kids, and do other things. Because what I realized is when you find time to do the things that you like, it keeps you motivated. And it gives you happiness and joy, and it would flow through to every other thing you're doing. When you're happy, you would flow to every other thing you're doing. So if you're constantly just working and not finding time to do the things that you like, you might end up being depressed maybe even, and just not like life. So I always found time to go train, play soccer, coach kids, and still while doing other things. So as students, it's always important that whatever we like doing, we create some time to do that while obviously pursuing our dreams and everything. Obviously, always remember your goal. at every stage, you always remember that, okay, this is what I initially set up for myself. Am I going to it? Write it down. I have my goal. I have my little board here. I always have my goals there that I want to pursue, so I can remind myself about it. And this is the last slide really that I wanted to say. Like, I think the goal is always to aim high. So even if you don't reach, you're still in a better place than if you aim low. This is something I wrote yesterday, and this has always been my main guide throughout my whole life. In everything I do, whether it's soccer, whatever I do, I aim for the highest. And if I fall below that, I'll still be in a better place. And I think that's what a lot of students were lacking around me when I was in school. Is like, if you're comfortable just getting a minimum, then that's when you fall below that, you would be in a bad place. But if you always aim high and try to get the best out of yourself, then regardless what happens, chances are you'll still be in a better place. So that's it for me for this presentation, at least. And I would love to know if there's questions. I want to make this interactive. I think Professor Rosavi, you can take it from here to coordinate the rest.
Oh my gosh, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, I think you all can tell why I asked Fabrice to come in and talk to us today. This is one of the things that I know about Fabrice, is that he was very busy when he was in school. So, you got a sense of that in terms of like what he was doing to coach his soccer and to do his studies, and to at one point, also get ready for the CPA exam. And he also took time to help other students. So other students who were struggling, particularly in accounting, you were really busy with that. And so I wonder if you can talk a little bit about, why do that? You've got your goal and you're heading out. What is it that you get out of like helping other people? Is there any benefit to you, or why do you do that?
Yeah, let me just do it. So first of all, with like helping out students, I like doing that. I remember one of the things you mentioned is I came back to tutor the students. Part of it was obviously when you tutor people, you learn from it. And the more you explain something to someone, the more you're like, I didn't even know I knew that. But more importantly, and this is the biggest reason why I help, I watched a lot of motivation videos, and there's this statement that one of the guys I watched, Inky Johnson, he used to make this statement. He said, as a courtesy to the generation coming behind you, leave the things that you are involved in better than you found it. And you see the signs, even bathrooms, where they're like, it's a courtesy of, leave things better. And I think that's why it's driven me throughout my whole life, because what I realized is if you're motivated by helping others and by making sure that, if you're constantly thinking of the people coming behind you, there's this inner motivation you get, which even when things go wrong and when times are hard, because there's times when you don't want to do it for you because you're like, I'm tired today. But if your motivation is not you, it's bigger than you, then that day when you are tired, you're doing it for the people behind you. Now I'm the first in the family of 5. So there are times when I do these things for them, not even for me. And so you end up seeing me busy doing all these things because I'm not motivated by me. I'm motivated by the people behind me. And so same thing with me coming back to tutor the Hillman program, the students behind me, the Hillman program, is because the more I do things for them, the more I have, it's a mindset. I'm building this mindset of being able to do things not just for me, but for the people behind me. And it's just a whole mindset. And sometimes I don't even realize it, but it's just a mindset that governs me. I'm constantly doing things for a bigger purpose than me, for the community behind me, my future family, and all of that. And that's always just been the motivation. So sometimes I do it because I enjoy it. Sometimes I do it because it's the mindset that has been wired in me. I don't know if that, yeah.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And, I know that some of our students are on here and that they appreciate that mindset, because I think that they reflect that as well. So and it is nice to be able to put words to the things that we do, right? Kind of makes you more aware of it. Yeah. So here's a follow-up question, because as I'm sure the rest of us can also imagine, you did have a really busy life. And we talked a little bit earlier about, I asked Fabrice to talk to us about like how he budgeted his, did he have a budget when he was in school, since now you're in the field of accounting, and you had a really interesting story. I wonder if you can share that with us.
Story about how I don't spend a lot.
Yes.
Okay, it's not that I'm cheap, first of all, but Um, that's funny stuff. Anyway, uh, so she had asked me how, and honestly, the truth about this, and I told her I didn't even realize this, but throughout, I just noticed talking to her that throughout my whole life, it's just because I've been so busy doing things that I don't even realize that I haven't had time to spend. Not that I even consciously think about it. And I told her, because we talked about like food, for instance. So I told her, I was telling Professor, I came from a culture where you wake up in the morning, you go, no breakfast, you just boom, go to school, and then you come back late, you worry about food later. So when I moved to the US, I would just wake up in the morning, get in my car, go to school. Go to school. I was in the soccer team. We're training every single day. We had practice 2 to 4 from Monday to Friday and games on the weekends. So I'll go to school from classes. I get into practice 2 to 4, spend an extra hour of practice just to get the stuff, to get more touches. Then do other stuff, do homework. By the time I'm really reaching home, a lot of the times it was already like 6 or 7 p.m. And so that's when I'm eating my first meal. And usually it might be something that they cooked at home, or it might be maybe just I'm very basic. I eat Chipotle and I'm fine. Or, just I don't know if you guys know Sardis, but so stuff like that. So by default, I just ended up not having time to spend a lot of money just because I was constantly doing things. I was constantly busy here, up and there, and I don't have the time. Even when I graduated, I went to the Big Four. These firms, you're working crazy. You're working 70 hours a week sometimes. And so throughout my whole time, studying for the CPA exam, that was intense. So I remember like during that time, that was the first time where I actually felt like I had time because I switched jobs and had a 9 to 5 schedule. But then the CPA exam means that I had to study even more because there's 4 sections and you have to pass them within a certain period of time. So I would leave work, I would go to work, leave work by 5 p.m., come take a nap. Before you know it, I'm back. I'm in Wegmans studying to 11 or 10. I'm into 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. Sleep, wake up the next day, Saturday, Sunday, I'm still there working. So I always had a routine throughout my whole time. And this is probably the first time where, because I've had the CPA exam knocked out, I've had everything. This is probably the first time where I even felt like, oh, I have time. And talking to Professor Rebecca today, I actually realized I didn't think about it, but I've just always had so much I'm doing. And a lot of the times is the reason why I'm able to do all of these things too is because I'm not doing anything that I'm forced to do. So the soccer thing, I'm always playing throughout the week. Practice, whatever, it's because I love to do it. Work, I don't hate my job, to be fair. And, so the CPA exam, I could just not get the CPA license, but I want to do it because I want to be the best and whatever. So when it's just a constant me staying busy, doing things that I want to do, and I don't even realize that I don't have time. But anyway, so that is kind of that's on food and all that. That's kind of why my body kind of self-regulated me. I don't know in a sense, but other advice for budgeting that I've discovered throughout my time, things that help, not budgeting, things that help with my finances. Obviously, I realized that like credit cards, for instance, I don't know if you guys know who Dave Ramsey is. I've been watching him a lot. Obviously, you can't take 100% what people say, but I've been watching Dave Ramsey's videos on YouTube. And one thing I've learned is like not spending too much money, not taking too many credit cards if you don't need. I know as a student, for instance, I had a Discover credit card. I'm like, oh, I have the money, could use it sometimes, but a lot of the times I didn't even need it. And it's just like, oh, I have it. And so I've learned that I shouldn't be taking credit cards if I don't need it. And the goal in general is the closer you are towards using more cash, the better. So, that's why the first thing I did when I moved to Florida here was pay off my car. Because what happens is we forget to pay ourselves. And the reason why is because when we get our paycheck, we're paying other people in general. And so when you stop taking credit cards and when you cut some of your expenditures, you realize that, okay, you have money to pay yourself by investing your savings long term. When you retire, you're going to need money to take care of yourself. But also, you can start saving to buy your own house. The reason why sometimes you're like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get a down payment is because you're constantly, you get your paycheck and you have to pay all these things. But the idea is to, find ways where we're taking less credit cards and then being able to take our paycheck and pay ourselves first and work towards, having cash in our hands to really take care of ourselves and make our long-term decisions. Like, you don't want to be renting because you're paying someone else instead of paying for your own house. So little things like that, my mindset has been a little bit different. And I would recommend if you don't know who Dave Ramsey is, just go on YouTube, find Dave Ramsey. There's short clips, maybe 7 minutes videos, 5 minutes where people call him, they explain that scenario and he gives them guidance. I've really learned a lot from watching him as well.
That's great. There are a couple of questions in the chat, so I want to make sure that we get them, but they're related, I think.
Yeah.
The students are interested in hearing from you a little bit more about your transition from Montgomery College to UMD. Mm-hmm. What were some of the challenges that you faced when you made that shift?
That's a nice one, actually. So when I went from Montgomery College to UMD, I think for me, the biggest thing that, the biggest issue for me in the beginning was this preconception, right? Because at every point in our lives, when you're making the next step, people that are there kind of come, they don't mean to, but they scare you. So when you're leaving high school to college, everyone's like, oh, you're going to be in trouble. College is tough, blah, blah, blah. Then you get to college, the first year, you're like, oh, it's not that bad. And then you're living from Montgomery College to Maryland, people that are there are like, yeah, the teachers here are mean, the classes are tough, blah, blah. So you're always walking into the next step with this fear. And so I think in the beginning, I had that fear. I'm like, okay, it's going to be tough. But I realized that it wasn't too bad. And I again, throughout my whole time, I've always used that one concept, which is being prepared ahead. That's always key in everything you do, whether it's sports, everything. If you're always working towards being prepared, that helps. So what I mean by that is, for instance, you already know Maryland is going to be tougher than Montgomery College. So you're thinking, okay, how can I make it less challenging and all of that? Okay, well, maybe, okay, this class is going to be tough, so maybe I have to put in more effort. So if I was doing 5 hours a week of study, just giving you raw numbers, if I was doing 5 hours a week to study for math, for instance, okay, well, you're going to Maryland where the classes are going to be a little bit tougher, so, okay, maybe I would do extra hours. You will not do 5, because if you do the same thing in Maryland, you will not get the same, because the classes are a little bit tougher. So all of that, what I say that to say is I had to do a little bit more to make it, or to get the same results I was getting MC. So it's not impossible. People are right. It's more challenging than Montgomery College. But if you're prepared, if you're going there knowing, okay, I have to buckle down. I know it's only going to be 2 years, 3 years. I'm going to buckle down and put the work. Okay, if I was doing 5 hours for this class, I'm going to do maybe 8 or 10 hours. If you do that, if you add to your work, if you add more time to whatever you're investing already, I think you'll be fine. When you're there, now, some of this, I don't know how COVID has changed things, but, in Maryland, networking was huge for me. Going to club events, they had NABA, that's National Association of Black Accountants. That's how I got my offers, because they have all these career fairs where you go there and, big firms come and recruit you. But you go to career fairs, there's like hundreds of you. The firms don't remember your name. They shake hands, you move on, they forget about you. But where I actually got my exposure to job opportunities was actually going to like club events, because they're like NABA, for instance, is usually like maybe 5 to 15 of us probably. And so you have the same firms coming to speak to only like 10 of you. And I'll sit in front. I'll make sure it's, again, prepared. I've thought about it. Okay, I want to stand out. So I'm wearing a tie and a shirt. Everyone else is just, little things like that. And I'm sitting in front. And I'll prepare questions. I'm not just there for an event. I'm there with a purpose. I'm there. I want to get out with a job today. So I'm sitting in the front, asking questions. At the end of the presentation, he remembers, oh, I remember you. So when I give you my resume, they're like, this guy was good. So little things like that, little tips. So going to club events, again, networking, making relations with your professors, and using the resources they have online. They have a lot of their libraries 24 hours. I ended up getting a job there because I used to study overnight. I prefer to study more at night, so I just got a night job there. I'm like, I'm always here anyways. Might as well just get a night job here and get paid for studying. But the whole point is Maryland is going to be difficult, but as long as you're prepared and as long as you know that you just have to do more than you were doing, you'll still get your results. I don't want people to go thinking it's going to be impossible, scary. It will be scary, but if you do more, you'll be good.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And you bring up such an interesting point, Fabrice, because I personally believe that if you started a community college and you make the transition to a 4-year school, every time you make a transition that's a challenge, you get stronger.
Yes.
And so you're actually in a better position possibly than somebody who started there and only had to make that one shift from high school to college. You've now done 2 of them. So I wanted to ask you, talking about transitions, you've now transitioned out of the state, right? And now you're in Florida, and you made that shift. That's a really big shift. Was there anything that helped you with that transition that is in your past in school?
Yes. One that I could even think of at the top of my mind, the relationship building. One of my coaches that I used to play with, when I was moving, he's like, oh, he was upset, obviously, you're leaving the team. But then he's like, okay, well, because we had a good relationship. He's like, he worked with a company that does like, they deliver cars and everything. Like, so he's like, okay, I can take your car there for free. That was a service that would have cost me $700 right there. He took my car from Maryland to Florida for free. So, but again, that's just a simple one right there. But as far as the transition, I think that for me, and this comes back to what I was saying, where I was telling you, Professor, earlier, where the bottom line is, if you get whatever you want to do, if you secure a base, what I mean by that is if you have the stability in your life, let's say you always wanted to do music, for instance, if you have your secure job and everything is secure and your mind is in good shape, you can make this transition. Like for me, for Florida, I was telling her it wasn't even something that I'd planned for a long time. I just said, okay, where I've always wanted to live in places that have good weather and palm trees. Okay, California is too expensive. Where Florida is not that expensive. There's no state tax. It's like, okay, well, I made that decision, but I said, let me come down here and check it out. I came down here, saw my friend. I was like, okay, I went back and I was like, I want to do this transition. Now, the only reason why I was able to make this possible is because I was telling her it was easy the biggest challenge would have been a job, for instance. You can't just wake up and say, I'm going. But now, because I had my CPA license, I put in I started looking for a job. It took me like 3 days, and I was able to already get an interview. And before a week, I had a job and everything secured. And even a better job than what I had in Maryland. And all of that happened just because I had my CPA license. I'd gotten everything that school-wise or in my profession that we needed. And so companies constantly always reach out to us anyways. So it was easy to make that transition because, I mean, I got the job very easily. And so I say that to say that the fact that I had my base secure, that helped as well. And I had my CPA license, that helped. And my relationships obviously made things easier. To say, I would give a slight thing there, since that's on the topic of relationships as well. Now, in our profession, I was telling Professor, in our profession, you get people reaching out to you on LinkedIn a lot, especially if you work for the Big Four, which I had on my resume. You have people reaching out a lot. And what a lot of people do is they just ignore it and move on. Like every day, I'm telling you, within a month, you get so many people reaching out. I have this business, can you come do it, in different parts of the world? And for me, what I used to always do is, for a lot of them, I'll just say, well, I customize a message. I'm constantly looking now, but in the future, if I want something, if I'm ready, let's talk. And so when I made up this decision, first thing I did was I reached out to 2 or 3 places. I was like, okay, well, I think now I'm ready to make it, but you guys don't I don't know. I'm not, they were in McLean. They had areas in DMV, but they don't have, I didn't know if they had one in Florida. I was like, but I want to go to Florida instead. They're like, oh, don't worry, we have an office there, connected me there. So it was on a Friday. By Monday, I had the interview, and then that's how everything worked. But all of that happened just because I still kept that relationship. I could have just ignored all those messages, but I always say, oh, well, it doesn't hurt to just copy paste. Where I'm not looking now, but in the future, if I do, boom, all right, we're done. Who knew that would someday I would need that? And so again, it's always keeping those relationships that, ultimately helps you. You don't know, it's a small world. You don't know where this professor or this student might be important to you. So
that's incredible. Yeah. And so it's really interesting because when you first told me, you started looking for a job and then like 2 days later you had an interview. I mean, that's unbelievable. But when you tell your story, Fabrice, you're talking about building you built a really strong ladder to that interview. I mean, you had done, not just done your homework, but you had done the work. You had put in the time, put in the effort, had the experience, had those relationships that you're talking about. So it becomes clear that this is something that we can all do. It's not really luck, right? You really made you made your own pathway to get where you are today. That's really incredible. Okay, so I have one more question.
Yeah.
Because you started by talking about long range plans, right? And instead of having a short vision, you have a long-term vision. And that long-term vision, it seems, has gotten you where you are right now. What for Fabrice is now the long-term vision? What do you see as your next?
Yeah, so for me, really, the next long-term goal is to try to work less. So that way, to work less whilst getting good enough money to be able to sustain. That way I have more time to invest in family, maybe, or in the things that actually, I'm extremely passionate about. I'm not saying I'm not passionate about accounting, but probably more passionate about maybe working with kids, for instance, and coaching kids than accounting. Not saying I'm not, but it's just so. For me, like right now, I'm obviously in public accounting still, and any firm in accounting that's within the top 10 means that you're working a lot of hours and you're constantly always busy. And a lot of people in my in the public accounting, in our firms like ours, people miss birthdays, people miss the kids growing up, they miss a lot of events. I know during taxes, for instance, everyone's like, man, why are you always working? I'm like, I don't want to be working. It's just, I have to be working. So long term, I don't want to do that. So for me, like within the next few years, my goal is to progress quickly up the ranks within where I am right now, and then make this transition to a smaller firm, which will pay you more because they see your resume. You've worked with all these people, and they will pay you more, and you have more flexibility. So not public accounting, but private, like maybe work with a company that has an accounting department who will pay me more, but then give me a 9-to-5 shift, which means I'll have more time to probably work on projects that I like, for instance, like coaching kids, or, having more time to spend with family members and having time to build my own family and stuff. So that's kind of what I have right now for me. Yeah.
Well, I cannot wait to get back. I mean, I know that we're going to stay in touch, and I'm really excited. I've already told Fabrice I'm going to have him back next semester or next year when we continue our series. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks to everybody else who joined us tonight. It's been a great pleasure.